Hey y'all, Lily here. Today we are getting started on our research for the Madonna of Bachelor's Grove Cemetery and the Hook, which is one of the origin stories to one of my favorite urban legends, the Hook Man. If you saw my update yesterday, I was doing a little bit of pre-research on this, and I don't want to get too much into it, but what I will say is if you haven't either read the written post or watched the wrap up on the disappearing house, or you don't know anything about the disappearing house, I highly suggest you go and take a look at those because there will be spoilers. I also want to just say thank you to everybody this week. I was very touched by all the support that I received at the beginning of the week and a lot of the kind words offered to me. I very clearly get nervous on camera, even though I'm literally talking to no one. And just people saying such kind things to me was really nice. And I just want to say thank you before I forget. I also am having a bit of a flare day and not feeling my best. I'm very scatterbrained and I'm going to be very chatty because I had to take some medicine to help so I could just sit here and get through this. So I apologize if I space out a lot. I am going to try and edit out any parts that are just very long-winded and pointless. But isn't that the whole point of my research videos? I'm just long-winded all the time. Anyways, we're going to get started before I get long-winded about being long-winded. Where are we? Let's see. The Hook. I was going to start with doing the Madonna first, but I'm really excited about this one, so I'm just going to dive straight away. And let's see. Like I said, he is one of the origins, or the story is one of the origins for the Hook Man, and I think most of us kind of know that story, you know. Two kids, lovers lane. In some cases, afterwards they just find a hook on the door, and in other cases somebody dies by the hook, usually the boy. But sorry, I'm trying to think and read at the same time, and whew, Lily's brain is a bit broken. Let's see. According to who I feel now is just like my literary best friend, Pete, from the Bachelor's Grove Cemetery and Settlement Research Center. He is the one who has written and compiled the Paranormal Guide. And I don't want to say he is the definitive source on all things Bachelor's Grove Cemetery, but he's basically the definitive source for all things Bachelor's Grove Cemetery. Everything that I find links back to his research and postings, and so it's kind of hard to do research when everything is so wonderfully compiled into one spot. And I know I'm kind of going on right now about some random person that you guys don't know. And it's all just because here I am trying to say where I'm getting my information from that I'm telling you guys. But bottom line, the work that Pete has done to put this information out online is extremely beneficial because we don't have to search absolutely everywhere on the internet. We can just kind of go to one spot. I am, doing my due diligence. But what I keep finding time after time after time again is every single source just links back to this site. So if you really want to spend a few good hours poking around the website to learn more about all the stories, look at all the photographs, kind of get your own point of view on things. In his works, he mentions so many books go to the library, check them out, because he has done so much work, you guys. And it's just so beautiful. I love it. And I just want everybody to go see it and read his stuff because, like I said, now I feel like he's my literary best friend. Never once had a conversation with this man. Pete, if you're out there, hi, I'm Lily, and I think your work is just fan-fucking-tastic. So, yeah. I appreciate everything you have done because it's awesome. Let's see. You know what? While I'm thinking about it, we are going to look back a quick minute. Sorry, my brain's kind of doing a thing right now. Ha. So, I thought, and I was right. Back in October when I was doing the urban legends, I do have one on the Hook Man, and I want to see what all... see on what Wikipedia has to say, which okay. So the legend of the Hook has been associated with Bachelor's Grove since the 70s, possibly into the 1940s, but definitively in the 70s. Let's see. There was a researcher by the name of Richard Crowe of Illinois who spoke of the legend while he was a guest on a widespread radio broadcast. He also mentioned it in his documentary in 1985, The Ghost of Chicago. So, at least the 70s, with the story of the Hook Man being at least possibly from the 1950s, but it was printed in an advice column for Dear Abby in 1960. So, see what they say the origin is. Began to circulate sometime in the 1950s. Became very widespread by teenagers by 1959. Yeah, okay. So, one of the origin stories for the Hook Man actually dates back as far back as 1946 with the Texarkana, I think, Moonlit Murders, which I do have some information on that. I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole though because that's quite literally not what we're doing here. But with it going that far back and the stories definitely being from the 1970s, the other origin being not really origin but first official telling being a reprint. And I say first official with it being a reprint because it doesn't say when the original one was printed, but it was printed in the advice column for Dear Abby in 1960. I had a thought train, it was just taking me a second to get there. So there's a few different origins for this that kind of relate, but it kind of stinks that the first known official telling of this particular piece of lore for Bachelor's Grove, not for the Hook in general, but just for this portion of it, is from the 70s. Let's see if it's also mentioned in his 85 documentary, The Ghost of Chicago. This gentleman has passed away about 11 years ago at the age of 64. Richard Kerr, the one who did the Ghost of Chicago. See a DVD video, but closest place I can borrow it from is 738 miles away. I don't think they're going to be willing to do that. I actually did ghost tours. It's interesting, he is also known for making the Resurrection Mary story known. I have thoughts now. Lots and lots of thoughts. Alright, so going down a little bit further. there was a version of this story in the 1989 book True Tales of the Unknown, the Uninvited, and it speaks of the hooked spirit as someone that would sneak up on parked vehicles. On page 52, it states he is sometimes reported to be carrying a double-barreled shotgun and chase lovers from the property which once belonged to him. And this is where it starts to match up with the legend of the caretaker for Bachelor's Grove. And then we have, of course, tellings of the young couple being all romantic and going home and finding the hook on the handle of the door. And then you have the versions where he is an escaped mental patient. During a 1977 radio broadcast in Chicago, Richard Crowe mentioned that the Lover's Lane story of the man being hung upside down goes back to the 1940s. It was not clearly stated if the legend truly applies to Bachelor's Grove Cemetery that long ago, but there is some sort of indication which suggests there may have been, or may have. Let's see, it says here, it basically implies that these stories aren't necessarily related to Bachelor's Grove, that people have just kind of let themselves believe it, like be led to it. And let's see, while on the radio in 1977, there was a mention of a friend at Cook County that was going to supply Crowe with a file which was supposed to indicate that the man hung upside down had in fact taken place at the cemetery, but the file was never received. It should be noted that during an interview with Crowe in 2011, when questioned about the file, he did not appear to be very interested and even chuckled, suggesting he had very low beliefs that any sort of incident took place at Bachelor's Grove Cemetery. So, but he had no problem, telling these tales. I have thoughts. I'm trying to be nice. I have a lot of thoughts. But we're going to go back to the more fun aspect of this. And we're going to look at the caretaker bit. Wait, what? Why did that open up in there? Sorry, these documents open up within Google Docs and it popped it up like in a corner, like in a, you're going to compose a new email in Gmail. And it's never done that to me before, so it threw me for a second and I got very, very confused. Alright. We never know, I use these apps constantly. So the caretaker is also known as the murdering caretaker and the one-eyed sniper, which I first read as the one-armed Did I say one-eyed? I meant one-armed. And I first read it as spider. My dyslexia is hitting a bit hard right now. And here I am trying to talk at the same time, while being blinded by lights. I'm on the struggle bus today, y'all. Alright. So, we have the caretaker, the murdering caretaker, and the one-armed sniper. The legend of the caretaker has been found to include many variations. The most common story speaks of a house located near the cemetery, which is supposed to have been the home of the caretaker. Other more modern caretaker encounters come with a twist you might not be expecting. I think there's a gentleman that people refer to as the caretaker. They also refer to him as a ghost. He is very much a alive person. Well, as far as I know, he's still alive. During all of the pieces that have been put together, he's still alive. Let's see. The house is said to be located a short distance of what is now the roped-off entrance to the main path leading to the cemetery. Legend has it that the caretaker went crazy and murdered his family. Different versions have different ways that they were killed. And afterwards it said that he took his own life in the house. And again, various different ways depending on the story. But ultimately the house was burned down with all of them inside. The earliest caretaker stories involve visitors to the cemetery running into the caretaker himself. During these incidences, it said the caretaker would tell you to leave the area whilst at times carrying an oil lantern in his hand, and would also be carrying a shotgun from time to time. The reports of shotgun and lantern stories possibly date back to the 1960s, with more widespread coverage through a radio broadcast in the 1970s by Richard Crowe. One version of these earlier stories can be found within an audio transcript of a speech given by a local school teacher. It speaks of an event that is supposed to have occurred sometime around 1971 between late November and early December. He describes two male college students who park on the once popular, now defunct 143rd Street pull-off next to the pond near the cemetery. They proceed to walk south on the narrow path between the pond and the creek and come up upon a man in his early to mid-70s walking towards them. The elderly man is described as carrying a clear globe lantern illuminating a yellow light, and begins to yell at the two students as he gets closer. The students eventually calm the man and let them know they are visiting due to the stories of the blue light in the disappearing house. Becoming agitated once again, he states the blue light does not exist. He continues to tell them that the house is very much real and that is the caretaker's house, in which he mentions that he is the caretaker. The old man ends up telling them to go see the house for themselves and follows behind them on a path going towards it. While on the path, the light from the lantern goes out and both students turn around and look to find that the man has disappeared. There is no mention as to if they found the house or which path was used. The caretaker legend shares a similar detail with that of the Hook spirit legend. Once in a while, people reference to a Hook handman with a shotgun who used to live in the area. Such tale can be found in the True Tales of the Unknown, the Uninvited. the Hook spirit legend, which can have small variations in itself, is generally considered an urban legend and that there are no facts to support it. This means we're going to continue on doing the caretaker. Because again, this one's very interesting. Alright, the earliest written record found of the tale thus far, as it relates to Bachelor's Grove Cemetery, goes back to 1975 within the Herald newspaper in Illinois. The article briefly states, hair-raising stories about a mysterious one-armed sniper. While speaking about other various stories associated with Bachelor's Grove Cemetery, today one visit... I wonder if it actually specifically mentioned Bachelor's Grove with this, or if it was just talking about other stories from the area and it paired it with them. Today, when visiting the cemetery, you can even come across old-timers that still give reference to a one-armed sniper. Let's see. I should have known better than just to fucking Google one-armed sniper Chicago. This is just a very fruitless search. Oh, welcome to America, y'all. Let's see. It says, in more modern times, the legend of the caretaker and his murders has become more popular due to the 2003 book Creepy Chicago. It goes on to speculate that the disappearing house near Bachelor's Grove Cemetery may be the same house that the caretaker lived in. There are even a few longtime visitors to the area who claim they remember a similar bloody caretaker story told to them by police officers in the late 1970s. Regardless of where the murdering caretaker legends originated from, there is still no evidence to substantiate them. In fact, Bachelor's Grove did not have a specific caretaker, as it was more of a collective effort to maintain the grounds by family members. During an interview with Richard Crowe in 2011, he also mentions that any tale of any caretakers is unfounded since the cemetery did not have one assigned to it. In more modern times, there is a tale that the caretaker's house was the blue house that stands next to the cell phone towers directly across from the Rubio Woods Forest Preserve parking lot. Contrary to this spin on the caretaker legend, the blue house was originally located somewhere within... oh my goodness. Cozyville? I had... wow. Whew. Y'all. I think it's Goateeville. I don't know. Settlement, which is near the intersection of what is now called 147th Street and Oak Park Avenue. Sorry, that is. Town names kill me. Alright, this would not locate the house close to the cemetery, as the legend usually states. Amazingly, according to historians, the house was later relocated from the old settlement and placed on the property where it stands today. Within an aerial photo from 1938, you can verify that the house was not even on the property yet. This also contradicts the common legend because it was never burned down, nor had it ever been burned down and rebuilt. Let's see, it says during a 2005 statement, during 2005, a statement was made from one of the current owners that the house was once used as the caretaker home. At present, there is no information to substantiate the claim. On the contrary, sometime during 2016 or 17, one of the owners presented legal paperwork concerning the purchase of the house and inquired about the real location where the house may have been originally stood. Sorry, my brain. Oof. This is due to them being curious as to why the basement foundation and its walls were made of much more recent material than the house itself. My brain just shut down for a minute. It's not that it shut down for a minute, it just, I'm processing the information that I am reading and gathering thoughts about Bachelor's Grove in general. I know, like, for the Madonna, the picture that I'll be looking at, I pointed out in my very initial day one research of the cemetery in general that it could just so easily be a person and be faked. So I know from my very initial day one research that I don't feel that that photo wasn't just a person. Or I feel that it was just a lady on the property that nobody noticed. But it just seems like with so much of this, I'm yet to actually finding a story that really feels like there's something truly paranormal. I mean, I've had a couple of personal experiences that I've read that have made me go, I really believe this. But I've also read ones that make me go, well, I don't feel a connection with this. I've seen photos that I don't feel connections with. It just all feels so crafted. Like, that's not more to do on this. You know, I've got the real life dude coming up here. But even that, yeah, he's a real person. So now I do know from reading a bit ahead that there is a story associated with him and Pete, and I haven't looked at any of the YouTube videos because I believe, yeah, from not too long ago, there is one that I am very interested in looking at, but there, there's just so much that is almost just kind of like we were falling into disrepair and nothingness, and then some stories got told that kind of helped bring it all back around to where people kind of care about it, but I hate to say that. You know? But I do find it very frustrating that it seems like Richard Crowe would tell stories and mention Bachelor's Grove, not say that they took place there, but mention them in a way that people made the assumption, and it created a myth and legend all on its own that it shouldn't have. But I'm starting to ramble, and it's just because my brain's kind of like, I hate to keep seeing things that it's just like, oh well, you know, this contradicts this, and this contradicts that. So now we're going to talk about the real life person known as the caretaker. His first appearance goes back to a YouTube video from 2009, and his alias at that time was Andy Kump, and it was supposed to be Gump, and people now know him by his real name, which is Rick or Richie, because he was unhappy with the alias. Sometime around 2014, he decided to tell everyone he was the caretaker, and it became a popular nickname for him. So he's not really the caretaker. He's very much a person. He's very much real. And he's definitely not a ghost. But Rick the caretaker enjoys telling stories of being a child that used to live in the blue house next to the cell phone towers. This next part makes me laugh. Even though the story is not true, given some of the history that surrounds the blue house and the tales of a caretaker that became attached to it, some people feel his personal story is real. So, proof that people will believe anything. If you spin a good enough tale, people will believe it. It's known that this is not true, but people believe it. Come on. Y'all be smarter than that. He's a good actor. What else died? I think the batteries in my mouse are going out. Let's see. What is interesting about the stories about Rick is that people, they have a hard time believing that he is real, because they would be speaking with him and then just like a moment later he would be gone. Some people report or describe speaking directly to him, turn their backs for a few seconds, and he would be nowhere in sight when they turned back around. He's Batman. At other times, people would describe seeing him in the general area, but seconds later, he was somewhere much further away, making witnesses feel like something was very wrong about the situation. These reports went unpublished as they were gathered by the Bachelor Grove Cemetery Settlement Research Center through casual on-site conversations. In fact, it was assumed that people were making mistakes since Rick can be a very fast walker and frequently headed off into the woods to urinate. Not long after the 2009 video was released, Pete finally revealed to Rick that he was being called a ghost by some visitors. He was unaware of the stories about him being reported as disappearing, but he quickly and happily adopted the Ghost of Bachelor's Grove term for himself long before taking on the Caretaker nickname. According to Rick, he feels that all the information pertaining to the paranormal is humorous and cannot be taken seriously. On occasion, he would happily state that he makes up stories for visitors to the cemetery, whether it sounded paranormal or not. So, I find this one more entertaining than, what was his name? Richard Crowe. Because, for starters, Rick's not really profiting off of this. At least, not to my knowledge, he may be, but not really according to this. But I've said in previous things that sometimes I have issues with this snake oil salesman in the paranormal industry. And that's kind of what Crow feels like, especially in the sense that he was telling stories that he knew not to be in the area, but would mention name casually enough, at least for the one. But you do it for one, how can I trust anything else? Yeah. I hear something clicking. I think it's an animal somewhere, but I don't know what they're doing. I'm just gonna ignore it. Alright, so there's more and more reports of it seeming like Rick was almost in two places at the same time. But they weren't consistent. They would have months apart, and it was just assumed people were making mistakes. Even groups of people were starting to notice this, where he would be talking to a group of people and all of a sudden be somewhere further away. One such group sighting took place around August or September of 2018 when approximately 4 to 5 young adults were standing on the eastern edge of the old turnpike near the creek on the southwest side of the cemetery. The group of people appeared to be confused, with some of them having heightened anxiety. They were questioned by Pete as to what happened, since it was apparent that something was upsetting them. All but one person in the group claimed to have been watching someone across the creek walking on a path, and right before their eyes the man disappeared. The general report was that when they turned around, the same person who disappeared was now inside the cemetery itself. They found it not only impossible, but most kept repeating that he disappeared right in front of their eyes. The one person who did not witness any man at all, let alone one disappearing, assumed his friends were either crazy or planned a prank and shrugged off the situation. When asked to what the person looked like, they described the classic clothing that Rick, the caretaker, typically enjoys wearing when he visits the cemetery. Pete, when he was told this was he basically tried to explain it to be Rick, and the people were upset that they were upset that he didn't believe him, that he didn't get it. He failed to record an interview with it, but this is the interesting part that I had seen before. Approximately 2 months later, on October 21st, 2018, Pete was filming a felled tree near the entrance to the cemetery of the Old Turnpike. Afterwards, the camera was put away and he placed his bag on the ground. After placing the bag on the ground, he witnessed Rick walking up to him in the woods, presumably to say hello, then reached down and grabbed a cigarette from the bag. When he looked up, Rick was nowhere to be seen. It was then that Rick was spotted inside the cemetery speaking with other people. Rick was immediately questioned as to if he was just in the woods, and Pete received strange looks from both Rick and those he was speaking with at the time. They all vouched that Rick had been with them for many minutes, and based on the distance from where he disappeared, it would have been physically impossible to have traveled the distance without being seen. Video evidence also proved that he was inside the cemetery before the encounter in the woods. Let's see. I don't know what I was supposed to be looking for in this little video, and there's no caption on it. I don't know what I'm looking for this one. This is less of a ghost story, I feel like, and more of a doppelganger kind of situation. Because there's also reports of Pete himself appearing and disappearing in front of people. There's actually multiple reports of this happening. I'm gonna pause because I have a few videos I have to watch. I need to watch them with sound. But I'm very confused now. Okay, I think I've got a thought train finally figured out with this, because how is it we started with the Hook origin story and have just looped around to ghosts and people who are real that people think are ghosts, to apparently doppelgangers. I mean, and the kicker is I had no warning about this, because I pulled up the map to see. They have a map where spooky things happen. And nowhere on here does it say doppelganger. And if you know me, like, everybody on my dad's side of the family has one. It's very weird. I have one. My brother, my dad, my grandpa. Do you know how weird it was the time that we were all at family dinner and thought my grandpa was running around on my grandma with some chick, but the more surprising thing was he was drinking beer, and it turned out it was not my grandfather at all. But very random, weird side story. But I was not expecting this at all. And so now, and two, what was it that I was just saying prior to this? And it was how much of this feels like it's just, I don't want to say fake, but fuck, I forgot basically what my wording was, because I was on a lily tangent, and that has since gone and been a while. But it was hard to find something to latch onto. But this is weird. This is creepy. It's different. I like different. But it's just such a weird little thing of being like, well, none of these stories really seem to be anything. And even then, I do need to go back and look at some of them, but it's just kind of more of a, this isn't real, so, or not real, but it does not relate to here. But this, oh, whew, let's see. We are going to open up a new window. And let's see how well Lily can spell. It's a bit of a German lesson right here that I'm reading through on just the origin of the word doppelganger. Let's see. Sorry, my head's doing a little puppy dog tilt when I'm reading. Let me turn my sound on my computer back down. Something that I didn't already know about what a doppelganger is, because again, I've looked it up a couple of times. Trying to form words makes my head hurt. So, in one of the videos that I watched just in between, there was a person who was with, what was it, their friend, I think. Make sure I say this right. Yeah. Her friend saw her in front of her and was apparently trying to get her friend to come over to her. And that she didn't because she noticed her friend was wearing different clothes than what she had been wearing before. And then ran into Cassie, who was someplace else at the time. But God. My brain is flipping. It's one of those ones that's really interesting because you have somebody who sees someone who looks like someone they know personally, that if you listen to it, the outfit that the doppelganger was wearing was not the outfit that Cassie was wearing that day, but was an outfit that she was known to have worn. And that it mimicked her voice. And I believe it said in the video that the voice was very similar, but like a little bit more urgent sounding, if I'm remembering correctly. And I just find that interesting because what is a logical explanation for something like this, where people are seeing someone they know, and in some cases someone they don't know, basically appear to be in two places at once, with one being the real person. If it's someone you know, I could say, because we've talked about this before with the fucking pond and swamp, there may have been some reported dumping, and I don't know. I'm not fully remembering because, again, it's like a pond and creek or whatever in the area. If it was someone they knew, if there was some kind of gas being given off by the pond or creeks or swamps in the area that could almost be hallucinogenic, okay, well then we have an explanation. But for it to be someone you don't know, and not even in the sense of like with Pete's story and people seeing him, and he was in one location and they saw him in another, he was on a different path, so it's not like he had walked by them and then maybe they had somehow killed a few extra minutes for him to be where he was next. Because he didn't say that he had walked past them much earlier. Does that make sense? I'm trying to have a train of thought here without being able to carry on a conversation with you guys. Ugh. Like, just what else aside from swamp gas could do this? Because again, like, if Pete had walked by those people and then like 10 minutes later they're like, oh, we just saw you like a minute ago. And he could have been like, well, no, that was like 5 minutes ago that I walked past you. But it wasn't that. And then the group of kids who saw Rick and he disappeared, and then they saw him elsewhere. My brain is turning. My brain has turned so long that my computer went to sleep. What am I gonna do? I need a break. I think I've been doing this for like an hour and a half or something, maybe longer. And even though I don't have all of that on film, my brain has just been going. It's pretty fried anyways from not feeling great. I've got like 2 brain cells. I appreciate you guys so much for sticking with it today. And I'm just trying to form words, and I have so many thoughts, and literally what I thought I was walking into is not, because I thought what I was going into was going to be something much different, but I didn't fully read everything. Because again, I wanted to share it with you guys. And now I'm just... I'm not stuck. I'm gonna... What am I gonna do? And pause. Well, I'm gonna be done for today on camera. But I'm going to flip through all my books and look to see what I have on doppelgangers. This is going to be a little bit difficult to like try and find lore on that's online, because it's such a well-known thing and it's been used in pop culture in so many different ways. But yeah, I'm going to flip through my books almost positive I have at least one thing on them. I'm going to think long and hard about what it is. Like this. You know what it is. I got overly excited, and so the universe said, "Ha! You got overly excited, and we're gonna turn it into something really different than what you were expecting." And you're still gonna be really overly excited about that. I'm sure you guys can see the smoke pouring out of my ears. I have a lot of thoughts going on right now. But yeah, I gotta flip through my books. See what it is I have. Sorry, see what it is I have. See what it is I don't have. Alright. We're gonna have to have a day 2 of research, more than likely. Maybe I can get that done tomorrow. We'll see. But I'll be back soon.